Our founding fathers envisioned a government where elected officials represented the voice of the people and acted on their behalf. Throughout history, America has struggled to live up to this ideal. In 2010, the promise of a representative democracy became less of a reality.
We begin with a ruling from the Supreme Court that could change how political campaigns are run in the future. By a vote of 5-4, the nation's highest court ruled that corporations may spend freely to support or oppose candidates for president and Congress.
So many people feel like government already is not fulfilling this role of accountability and responsibility, and Citizens United just exacerbates that. Citizens United specifically sort of unleashed money that we hadn't seen being spent on a scale that it hadn't been spent before, nationwide and in North Carolina.
The judges' races are one of the clearest examples. There's been examples all over the country of where a judge got a bunch of money from a company. There were mining interests in Appalachia that did this. All across the country where that big money had a direct result on the decisions that ended up happening in the court systems.
In North Carolina, outside money entered the 2012 race for Supreme Court justice in a big way. In the battle for a swing seat on a divided court, incumbent Paul Newby faced Judge Sam Ervin IV. Issues at stake for the court included abortion, school funding, redistricting, and important decisions regarding tobacco and insurance companies.
Well, it is the most important election you're probably not hearing about, but thanks to a new ad, more people are aware of a critical race.
There's a judge they call Paul Newby.
This ad was paid for by the NC Judicial Coalition, a political action committee, or super PAC legalized by Citizens United. Behind their benign name were contributions from R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company, insurance companies, and other groups with business coming before the North Carolina Supreme Court. The NC Judicial Coalition and other super PACs spent over $2 million to make sure their candidate won the NC Supreme Court election.
This idea that a lawyer or a corporate interest that has a case pending before a judge, that they could somehow drop a bunch of money on a judicial race and that doesn't somehow give at least the appearance of corruption, that shouldn't happen, right? That is not good justice. That's not how we want our system to work.
The 2012 Supreme Court election broke previous spending records in North Carolina, and spending increased exponentially for other races throughout the state. Remarkably, 10 groups accounted for more than 90% of the state's independent election spending.
I think we're teetering now toward turning into a society that's completely dominated by a handful of interests. The corporations in North Carolina, the PACs in North Carolina, insurance companies, oil companies, and the rest. It's going to be harder and harder for average people to have any sort of impact on their government and the decisions that affect their lives. It's a very ominous time.
But there is a better way. Right now, North Carolina has a program that gives candidates grants to run clean campaigns, free of corporate donations and all the strings attached to them. It is considered the gold standard of campaign finance in the United States.
The idea is that any person can run for office, and they'll give you a public grant if you raise a bunch of small donations. So this Clean Elections program has been very successful. It's been tried for the Council of State races, judicial elections. Over 70%, both Republican and Democratic candidates have used it. So it's considered a really successful program.
And the good thing about public financing is it disconnects wealthy special interests from our elections by allowing candidates to raise money for their campaigns without relying on special interests.
I had spent my last campaign running as a publicly financed candidate, which is I was the first insurance commissioner candidate to do that, and I spent very little time fundraising because of the way the public financing laws were in place, and I was able to spend 100% of my time campaigning, meeting with people.
Well, these public financing programs force candidates to go out and actually talk to voters again.
I come from Hamlet North Public Schools.
Public financing also allows everyday people who can't self-finance an expensive campaign to participate in our democracy.
It means a lot broader section of our people can run for office. You're going to see people of modest means who actually have a chance with this kind of program.
But since Citizens United, it's very difficult to succeed as a publicly financed candidate. In the 2012 Supreme Court race, both Newby and Ervin were technically publicly financed. But that didn't stop unregulated super PACs from spending $2 million in TV ads and mailers to support Newby. This flood of outside money overshadowed the $240,000 in public funds each candidate received for his campaign.
And I think it makes it even more devastating for those of us who want to do good and be good public servants, because how can you compete against millions and millions of dollars that can come from out of nowhere?
But powerful donors and the candidates they back are working to ensure that Citizens United is upheld and public finance is undermined. One such donor is Art Pope, a North Carolina multimillionaire who funds super PACs and groups like Real Jobs North Carolina, Civitas Action, Americans for Prosperity, and the John Locke Foundation, which published legislative recommendations to get rid of North Carolina's public financing program.
So the fact that these special interests are now interested in getting rid of public financing, which helps protect voters against special interests, is really telling. It's an attempt to secure power for the long term in North Carolina by getting rid of the solutions to Citizens United.
Understand their concerns about the...
So I have actually introduced legislation to address Citizens United. I introduced legislation that would rein in, it would require better disclosure by companies and require a shareholder vote. Several states around the country introduced similar legislation. I'm not sure any of it advanced. These sorts of things that are perceived to hurt the electoral chances of the party in power don't really see the light of day. So
at every turn, groups like Americans for Prosperity, Civitas Institute, the John Locke Foundation have opposed this idea of trying to level the playing field. The way I look at it is they want Pope-funded elections, not publicly funded elections.
Citizens United takes a government that was already struggling to be of, by, and for the people and sort of puts it on a fast track to government of, bought, and paid for by wealthy special interests.
Is this what our founding fathers had in mind? Is this your dream for our democracy?
When people are polled about whether they like the way big money runs their campaigns, they say no. What they need to understand is that there's a way out. There's a solution.